Welcome to Fearless and Flawed. Today, we're joined by Alreen Haeggquist. Alreen is a trauma-informed mindset coach, best-selling author, and speaker who transforms her survival of childhood sexual abuse into a mission of empowerment and healing. As managing partner at Haeggquist and Eck, LLP, she has recovered millions in workplace justice cases and now inspires others through her coaching, speaking, and book, Fired Up, Fueling Triumph from Trauma.
In this conversation, we'll explore how Alreen turned personal trauma into triumph, what it means to fight for justice inside and outside the courtroom, and how she helps others reclaim their power and voice.
We'll also talk about her path to writing her book, the tools she uses to guide clients through healing and growth, and the lessons she's learned about resilience, leadership, and living with purpose.
And I'm Serena, and I build systems that make leaders impossible to ignore, turning podcasts into pipelines and webinars into cash machines.
And I'm Sarah, an email marketing pro, here to convert clicks into cash. Together, we're two women in charge, digging into the fearless, the flawed, and the fabulous journeys of female founders rewriting the rules.
Let's dive in. Welcome to our show, Alreen.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and for the introduction.
Alreen, your journey is such a powerful blend of personal resilience and professional advocacy. Can you take us back to the moment you realized your own story could become a source of healing and empowerment, not just for you, but for others as well?
I would say that's fairly recent. You know, it was something, my story of what happened to me as a child was something I kept secret for so long. And I thought that's where it needed to be powerful, to be a business owner, to be a lawyer. I thought I needed to hide that. But it was really my clients teaching me as they told their story and seeing them be empowered from speaking out, standing up to their abuser, going through the system, and seeing them on the other side of their healing. That also allowed me to see how powerful that was, right? I experienced it through therapy and talking to my therapist, but letting it out publicly was really something I learned from my clients. I would say that's been in the past, I don't know, probably 5 years or so.
Wow. And did that change the trajectory completely of career? Like, one thing is to be working with clients, the other is to be working through your own personal trauma. So how did that collide, conflict, enhance kind of your day-to-day, maybe change gears, enhance the current journey?
I would say it's definitely enhanced, which is again why I wrote the book and why I'm, come on podcast and why I'm so passionate about doing the work that I do, because it has enhanced so many areas of my life, not only my personal, like mental well-being, my physical well-being, my relationships, not only with my husband and my child, but with my friends and colleagues. And just feeling just good in your own skin, right? It's allowed that shame and that fear that you really hold because of sexual abuse to really get lifted by going through the process of speaking out.
Well, walk us through your what does the advocacy look like for those that are listening? Because we know a little bit about you. We've chatted a little bit before. Walk us through, what does that look like when we talk about advocacy, speaking out, career? Like, walk us through day to day and then big picture.
Sure. So I'm a lawyer out here in San Diego, and I represent primarily women in cases of sexual assault and sexual harassment, primarily in the workplace. It can also be against institutions. And for women that have suffered inequities, right? You're not getting paid the same, you're not getting treated the same, just primarily because of your gender and no other reason. And so I represent those women against large corporations here in the United States, against powerful individuals who really think the law doesn't apply to them, right? They have been acting with this idea that they can do what they want because, the size of their company or the amount of money in their bank account or the positions of power that they hold. And so my job is to help women stand up to them, right? Because they're really scared. Like the other individual is always coming in with a lot more resources, have been telling them typically that nobody's going to believe them. And they've experienced that, right? They've experienced people not believing them and being told like, oh, let it go, move on. This will be a career killer. You shouldn't say anything. And so then to have them come into my office and really just that first step of letting them know what their rights are, right? Letting them know what their laws are and how many laws do actually protect them, right? Because they start in a place that they don't think that exists based on their experience and what they've been told. So the first part of advocacy to me is teaching the women that come into my office about the rights that they have and the protections that they have and their options of the things that they can do. They then get to make a choice of which path they want to go on.
When you say it this way, it's like, wow, this is very empowering, right? This is, if something has happened, there's someone like you to go to. There's someone like you to fight the dragon, to slay the dragon. But naturally, we know that we are living in a society where doubt is usually a first line of a reaction. What do you find in your experience for those listening that until they find you, right? What do they hear? What do they experience? What are maybe the subtleties, the subtle, nudge, nudge? It's better off if you keep your mouth shut. Like, how can you help enlighten us with those day-to-day conversations that I'm sure happen in families, in coworker settings? And again, sometimes not even malintended, right? Sometimes it's maybe this is for your best, but how can you help educate us towards kind of those danger zones that we live in every day when it comes to hearing the story and first reactions, and then how it kind of bubbles up to you and you go, oh, no, 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 don't believe that. There's something here to really, to really work with.
So I'm definitely a last resort. Nobody wakes up in the morning and is like, I want to go see a lawyer and bring a lawsuit. That's not how most people want to live their life. And so they come to us really as a last resort. They have tried to speak out, like to a boss or human resources, or they've tried to bring it to somebody's attention and they haven't been listened to, or they're scared because of the ramifications, right? They are, professionals are worried about how it's going to affect them professionally, like what people are going to view them as troublemakers, or they're worried about, maybe what their husband will think or their boyfriend when they find out that they were sexually assaulted by someone else. They're worried about the family ramifications, really sometimes against the person that's been abusing them, right? If I come forward, how is this going to affect this abuser's family and his kids? And so there's a lot of fear as to what's going to happen if they come forward. And then there's a lot of shame attached to it as well, because no matter what, even though they've done nothing wrong and it's not their fault, the first reaction is always, what could I have done differently, right? How did I get myself in the situation? I shouldn't have been there. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have gone out to that dinner. If I didn't attend that conference, this wouldn't have happened. I mean, you always go through all the things you could have done to avoid what this person did to you.
But is there also an element of empathy as well for the abuser?
Yes, exactly.
In a strange kind of way, maybe not just what did I do wrong? Maybe I misinterpreted. Maybe, they're nice in so many other ways, but I don't like this. Do you come across that a lot?
Well, for sure. And especially in a relationship where you're close to the person. The person that abused me was my father. So talk about empathy, right? This is the person that raised you. And so it is complicated in that sense, right? They've done these things for you that are nice or that have supported you in some way, but then they've done this horrible thing to you and you're trying to reconcile that, right? Your feelings towards that. And so, some of the things they do, one, they just try to avoid situations so it stops. They've tried to speak out, like I said, to a boss or somebody above the person to try to get it to stop. And either they've been told, we don't really have any evidence. We can't really prove it. He says he didn't do it, so we got to move on from it. Or they've been told, if you do that, if you say anything, you're going to get fired. Or if you say anything, you're going to lose, the stock options or this bonus that you've been getting, whatever it may be. They think there's going to be a ramification for coming forward. And so, but at some point they can't essentially take it anymore, right? Like it's gone to be too far. And that's when they show up at my office. Like they don't know what else to do because they feel like they've tried different things. It's not going away. It's impacted them. Like sometimes they have to go out on medical leave because of how it's affecting them. They're unable to do their job because of the impact. It's affecting their relationship, their home life, right? And so they're kind of at wit's end, and that's how they show up to me. And they're usually really anxious. really scared. They don't really know what they can do. But yes, they've heard about me in some way and they show up at my office to get more information, really.
So when you say that you're the last resort, you really are. They're jumping off a cliff, really, at that point, because they've got nothing else to lose. So that must be hard for you to be in that situation and to talk to these women or people. I'm not just going to just bucket into women there. I mean, that must take quite a toll on you as well.
Yeah, we have it is. There's a right listening to other people. And I definitely carry like my client stories, I really do carry them with me. So the person in our office who's our survivor advocate, she also helps us, from being re-traumatized by taking on other people's trauma. So we work on our own self-care. But that is the I feel like my purpose and what I've meant to do. And I do enjoy helping the women I do, especially because I know what it's going to look like on the other side, right? I know how they're feeling right now is temporary. And I know they don't believe it, right? Like when they come into my office and I tell them this, I go, I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but I promise you're going to be so much better off, at the end of this. It's just you can't see it right now, but I can from my experience. The other thing I think that's really comforting to them is that I remind them that what you're hearing is what we hear in every single case, right? We call it the 3 lines of defense, and you're going to get this in every single case. And the first line is always to deny that it never happened, right? You never did that. You're just making it up. I don't know what you're talking about. And when they can't do that anymore because there's some pieces of evidence or there's, really like a document or they can't refute it, then they go to the second line, which is, well, she wanted it, right? We had a consensual relationship. We were dating. She asked for it. She's the one who, asked me out. And they always go to that level. And then the third one is always to attack you, right? To attack who you are as a person, who you were as an employee, how you're a terrible employee, that you're just doing this to get back at him for some reason, or you're just doing this to get back at the company, whatever it may be, they attack you. And all of a sudden, you've gone from like, the star employee at the office to like the worst employee that ever lived on earth. And that's really hard for people, right? Like to experience that. But I think knowing that that's what they do to defend these cases, I think lets them know that they're not alone. And it's not personal. It's just how the other town defends what they did because they know their actions are against the law.
I'm so annoyed just by hearing that though. Like I'm so like disgusted. Like you say it like this is, and I'm like for people if you are watching on YouTube or if this is a video, like sir, I was looking at Serena's face, like every single line of defense, our faces kept scrunching up, and I was like, wait until they say she's just crazy. Wait until and that's basically the third line of defense. She's just disgruntled. She's just crazy. Yeah, and I'm like, wow, how do you not want to just lose it? I mean, I know you talk self-care, but like this is some heavy shit where it's like, even though there's a pathway, it's like this is still difficult, right? Like
just jumping in there. As you were saying, the 3 lines of defense, the whatever, however you said it, Sarah. So I do show my emotions on my face. Anyone that watches the video, but I have to admit, I actually kind of found that quite reassuring. If you can actually tell people this up front, this is what's going to happen, then when they get attacked, when they go through those 3 stages, they're expecting it. And I think that's really powerful to be able to give that to them.
Yeah, I agree. I think so too, because then they know it's not them. It's just their method of defending this action, right? They don't have anything else to defend it. So that's how they do it. And we are prepared for that. We know this is what's going to happen. So we prepare on the front end to respond to these things.
Does it ever make you, I wonder this, because I appreciate that. Here's what's coming. You sound like an optimistic person. You sound like did it ever just make you say, humans suck? Like, do you ever just have that moment though, where it's hard to say, though this is the process and that's reassuring, this is a process that is so predictable that now you have kind of this foreshadowing of what's come. How do you draw that barrier of, yeah, there are shitty people, this is a process, but like you don't lose your faith. You don't lose your trust in humanity. You don't lose your ability to fight for the little guy. Like what does that look like? I know you mentioned self-care, but mentally, physically, spiritually, mantra-wise, because that must be tough just to then walk out of the office and believe that, humanity is good some days.
Because I surround myself with really good people. I think when you surround yourself with these amazing humans, you see the other side of what good humanity looks like. And I have that in the people that I work with. I have that with my friends. I have that with my husband. I have that with my daughter, right? Like, and you see that, and that's who you make your community and the people that you associate with. And you recognize that there are bad people and ill intent people. And that's what I feel like my job is, to let them know they don't get away with it. And there are repercussions to it.
I love that. We talk about community a lot. Like that's it. Like good. Everything in life is balanced, right? There's bad people. You're on the right side.
I'm not even. I mean, I'm jumping in here. I'm not even sure that there is just black and white, bad people, good people. I think we're all shades of grey somewhere, and I think there's a lot to be said about learned behaviors, the age of individuals, what the standards were when they grew up, and there's so many variables. I'm not defending anybody here. But one of the things that really struck me in recent years was the Me Too campaign, where women were writing Me Too on their social media, and it was just like mind blowing, because things that, to be perfectly honest, when I was younger, you would literally just ignore the kind of things that happened, or the comments that were made, or as simple as the wolf whistle walking down the road in your school uniform. Come on, guys, we're kids. It felt very different, and then all of a sudden you start thinking, actually, no, that wasn't right, that was wrong. And so, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think the Me Too campaign, and when you just saw this whole sea of people, women and men, posting up Me Too and, touching on their stories, just realized how widespread and what a big problem it all really was.
I think about 50% of the people have been sexually assaulted. I mean, that's staggering to me, right? 50% of us. And I think that's actually a lower number than it actually is, because people don't report.
I don't work in your industry, but from conversations, more private conversations, I would say that you were absolutely bang on, that it is much higher than that.
But I was in awe of the Me Too movement. I think it finally gave women like knowledge that they weren't alone, because that's the thing. We've always thought we're all by ourselves. It was only happened to us and it wasn't happening to other people. And so I think the Me Too movement really opened the door to let other women know that you're not alone. And by speaking out, you're helping another woman come forward, right? So she knows she's not alone in that process. With respect to your other comment, I am one of those people that do believe there are some people that are innately just bad. They were born that way in some way.
I'm an
like
optimist.
the dark side. But then I agree. There are good people who do bad things, right? They're not innately that way, but they make bad decisions, or the way they're brought up, or whatever it may be, they do bad things. And unfortunately, I never go into situations where they say, "Hey, I'm sorry. I wish I hadn't done that. I made a bad decision." That does not happen in any of my cases. That's what I'm saying. Like, so they could be a good person who did a bad thing, but they cannot like become accountable for their actions. They don't acknowledge it and they don't show accountability for it, which is what the legal process is there for. It's to say, no, this is how we show accountability. It's by letting you know that you can't do that.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. And how is the coaching aspect? Because you are, per the intro, like you are partner at this law firm, right? But you're also a coach. It's the power of the voice that I think that is, maybe I'm loosely saying, because we've interviewed like life coaches, quote unquote, but I think there's more of this, especially with writing the book, which we'll get into. the let me rephrase, coaching not in I'm a health coach, life coach, trauma coach per se, but you've experienced trauma. You've experienced personally, which at the end of the day, when we talk to quote unquote coaches, there's always the personal experience that has elevated them to be in a position to guide others. So let me clarify with that I think when I say coach, the guidance, the writing the book, the evolving, that typically, at least in my experience when it has come to lawyers, writing a book about a personal traumatic experience and rising from that really sets you apart in terms of kind of that opening up. And I think lawyers in general, at least this day and age in society, we don't really perceive many of them to have kind of that other side, if you will. And so that's what I'm referring to when I say coach is like, okay, how do you take that personal, that trauma? You wrote the book. Does that come in like touchy feely? I hear what you're saying. I feel you. Or is there no place for that in law? Is this very like, this is very black and white how we're going to do it? And let's leave the other maybe emotional part of it for another day? Like, how does that work? Or is it all intertwined?
Yeah, it's all intertwined. So yeah, that's how I thought you were using the coaching aspect. That's what I do with my clients, right? And people that are not my clients, I am coaching them to come forward because I believe by speaking out and not keeping it inside you, that is really your start to your healing journey from experiencing some form of sexual assault. And so I do, I talk about the issue. Go on podcasts. I speak on the topic. My clients I talk to about, potential clients I talk to about, and the emotional part is completely intertwined because that's how it's affected you. That it's affected you emotionally. So we have to talk about it. And then my job is to understand how it's impacted you and then be able to tell your story, right, of what this did to you and how it's affected you to get money, right? The cases I work on, at the end of the day, I can't change what happened, but I obtain money because money is justice in our system. And we obtain money for the harm that you suffered. And that's how you can move on, with your life and close this chapter. And so that's my job, is to understand the emotional harm that they'd experienced and then be able to go to a judge and a jury and the other attorney to explain the harm that this has caused and why they should pay the amount that I'm asking for.
Can I ask, so the women that come forward and stuff, it's a very brave, like you said, they're at breaking point. When they come to you, they just don't know where else to go. Do you feel as though justice really does get done? Do you think that they do move on with their life? Do they find it difficult to get additional jobs? You might not be able to answer this, but does this follow them around? I'm asking this because I feel as though this is a real fear for people coming forward.
That's why I know that. Like, I know when they come, they have all of those things. Am I going to find another job? Is everybody going to know about this? What are people going to think? Is my other employer going to think I'm just a troublemaker? Am I going to be known professionally, right? Especially for professional women. You've worked so hard to become the CEO or the lawyer, whatever position you are. You've worked really hard to get there, and they're so worried that that's what they're going to get remembered by, right? That they came forward about a sexual harassment issue or came forward about sexual assault. They're going to be remembered for that as opposed to all of the work they did at the company. So these are real fears, but that's what I'm saying. Like, after, doing this work for over 20 years, I've seen women on the other side and everybody is better off, not necessarily because they went through the justice system, right? I'm not saying, oh, by filing a lawsuit, you're better off, but it's the fact that they didn't allow it for the other side to say that didn't happen, right? They didn't brush it under the rug. They didn't pretend like nothing happened. They stood up for themselves and said, what you did to me was wrong, and I'm going to hold you accountable for it. And that's the piece that's empowering to them. And that's why I say they are better off at the end of it.
I'm so proud of every woman that ever steps up and has their say and tries to break the cycles that so many have lived under for decades, millennia.
And what's interesting, one of the things I always think, if you're going through this process, you identify like why you're doing it, why it's important, because sometimes, doing it for ourselves isn't enough. Like, we don't think we're worthy enough to stand up for ourselves. And I see that in women that come forward, if they can't do it for themselves, they're doing it because they don't want their daughter to know that their mom took this and didn't say anything, because they don't want their daughter to do the same thing. or they have a colleague, they didn't say anything when it happened to them, but then they see their colleague experiencing the same thing. And you're like, I'm not going to let this happen to my colleague. So if they do it to protect somebody else, then I think that's really powerful. And then again, it starts flipping to wanting to do it, for themselves and seeing how it impacted them and empowered them in the process.
And in your journey, you've written a book. You've written a book, which it's called Fired Up, Fueling Triumph from Trauma. So was that kind of your, I'm doing this naturally for myself to tell my story? Can you guide us through how, from law firm attorney to author, how did that happen? What was the reason why? What was the inspiration behind it? What's been the reaction now that it's all out there?
We were talking about earlier about the Me Too movement, and the Me Too movement, like I was saying, I was so excited for all these women to come forward. I was like cheering them on. And during that time, I felt like such a pathetic hypocrite because I couldn't say the words Me Too. I couldn't say it because I was still in that place of being so ashamed of what happened to me. And I didn't need to tell everybody what happened. I could have just said Me Too, but I couldn't even do that. And so for me, as I went through my healing journey and I, went through therapy and I did a bunch of different modalities, the book was my Me Too. It was me coming out and saying, yes, this happened to me. And I had never said anything before. I had never spoken out before. And again, because I'd seen the empowerment that my clients felt, that was the way I did it, right? There wasn't a lawsuit to be had. It was coming forward and saying, this is what happened to me. And I wanted to show other women the benefits of it. And I didn't know how else to do that besides writing a book and telling you my own experience of going through the process and then seeing it from my clients of the process that they went through. I would say it was a difficult journey. I had journaled in college. I always tell women, if you're not ready to speak out, the first thing you can do is journal, right? Just get it out of your head and start putting it out on paper. So it's not just like ruminating inside. And so I had journaled in college. And so writing the book was really like the first time of identifying, not only what happened to me, but how it made me feel and the impacts that it had on me during that time. I mean, as a child, I was, very depressed. I was suicidal, which is so foreign now, right? Like I can't even imagine being in that place. But as you write the book and you were editing it and going through all that, it brings all of those emotions back up. So I would say it was difficult emotionally. But then like each time you did an edit, right? Like you write it down, you edit it. It like didn't carry the weight anymore. Like, the first time, crying, second time, probably still crying. And then it just like stopped. And that's been the same process as I start talking about it. It just continues to lift this heavy weight that you didn't know you were carrying. But now that it's gone, you're like, how did I live like that? Right. It's so freeing. And that's, I think, a process. Like I can tell you that, but you're not going to really know that until you go through it. So that's how the process was while writing it. And each step, right, it was another thing, right? First, it's like writing it. Then it's like getting it in a book, but then it's letting it out to the public. Right now, I've really let it out. Everybody knows, right? And same thing, that was really empowering because like, I'm not really afraid of it anymore. It doesn't bother me. It's like, yes, this horrible thing happened, but here I am, better off, not better off for it, but just who I am because of it, right? I don't think I'd be able to be where I'm at right now if I didn't have those experiences, because it definitely made me very resilient and very fired up.
I'm in complete awe of your resilience and your strength.
Yes, especially since family was tied in with this. So I have to imagine family had, reactions. And this is not, and again, I'm not diminishing if it was a colleague or work, like it's bad all around. But when it's really 1 degree of separation versus 3 or 4, that sounds heavy on so many levels. So specifically with family, how was that received, or had you healed at that point? Or I know healing's a process. Let me not suggest it stops, but was that kind of unearthing something that maybe had been in the healing process? What did that look like?
Well, my family, I'm the youngest of 10 kids. I don't know if we talked about that before, but I'm the youngest of 10 kids, the youngest of 6 girls, right? And so the abuse in my home, didn't, start with me, but it did end with me. And so in my family, we just really never talked about it, right? Like we've talked about it to a certain degree, but like, again, you push it under the rug. Like we're fine, we're functioning, get over it, right? And so me coming out with the book, I really tried to be mindful of the fact that my story was part of their story, right? Like I didn't want to tell what happened to them, but what happened to me did have an impact on my siblings. So yeah, so it was a tough year, I would say. I think for me, I had a lot of tools, right? I've been going to therapy, I've been on this healing journey for a while, and my siblings haven't been. So that was hard. I kind of forced the issue on them, right? Like I had been dealing with it. They might not have been ready, but I forced them to deal with the issue by publishing a book. So I would say it was a tough year because I don't think they understood why I was doing it or why I did it. And I had, a lot of silent treatment, I would say, for the past year, but like everything, time does heal, right? And I'm still the same person. I'm not keeping this thing a secret anymore in our family. So we can talk about it or not, but I'm not going to be quiet about it. And
That shows a huge amount of bravery because you knew the consequences that you could have been facing by coming out, which is so unfair because it wasn't your fault. That's the injustice about all this. It wasn't your fault. You did nothing wrong. And yet you still had to face some consequences. I'm hoping now that's you're good with your family and things are better than they ever were.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think too, what we hear about a lot, and this will tie into the question we're going to ask you that in a little bit, but sometimes, it's the unknown, right? Whether you're a business owner, whether it's conversations within your own family, there's a lot of unknown or known but not spoken, right? And so this ties into what we like to do at nearing somewhat of the end of the conversation. We like to surprise you. Now we like to play a game of we have a question that you don't know about from our previous guests. Barring in mind that our previous guest, I believe she worked in bookkeeping services, so completely different industry. And just to give you some context, she talked a lot about, kind of her clients coming in and kind of putting their fingers in the ears and going, la, 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 la. I don't really know about profit or this or that. I don't really need to understand my books and how that has impacted them. Right? Ignorance is bliss until it's really not. So, right. So with that said, because that's kind of the preamble to the question where we asked her, what do you want to ask our next guests? And she said, how has paying attention or not paying attention, it made an impact in your business? So a very kind of a bit of a vague general question, but take that for what it's worth. How has paying attention or not paying attention made an impact in your business?
I would talk about this and I'd use the word intentional versus not intentional, right? Like a lot of the things I did in my business were not intentional, right? Because I had the passion or the drive to do the work. The business might not have been, at its best, but we were still building a reputation. We were still doing good cases, but the business wasn't there. The business aspect of the law wasn't there. And then I think just having the intention of like wanting to run a business and be a business owner, not just a lawyer, but a business owner and what that looks like. I think that's really taken my law firm to the next level. It's just being intentional about the work, the culture and the place I wanted to create. And I think that's just taken us to a whole nother level that we wouldn't have been in if I continued to live in this unintentional, not paying attention world that I was in.
What does that look like? Because when you said it, you lit up, you smiled. The culture, I want to become a part of the team. What does that look like when we work together? What's the environment?
Yeah, so we have a very great team. We always describe ourselves as a very work hard, play hard type of group. So it is pretty intense, right? During the work that we do, we just talked about how it is and the work and the people that we're going after. So that part's really intense, and so the team gets together regularly for fun things. We have we celebrated our 17-year anniversary on Tuesday. So we went out for happy hour. People, bring their spouses and their kids. And it's a very family environment because we do spend a lot of time together. They work well together. We have a very team team environment. So all the work is done as a team and, always like very client centric, or everybody's wanting to do the right thing for the client. That's at the end all, the most important thing to us. And then just always wanting to be better, right? So the whole team has this like evolving every day. Like we are always trying to better ourselves, better the firm, better our processes, whatever it may be, but never being stagnant or mediocre on anything we do. That's the environment. You would like it.
I love it. I love it. It feels like, the best of both worlds. Justice is being served and we're hanging out and having a little fun on the side.
Hugely fulfilling job when it goes right, I'm sure.
Yes. And that's what, like we can fight with them, but like having a nice place where you come to, where you enjoy working at with the people that you're with is so important, So I intentionally, put my efforts into making that. And it's nice now to see. And that's probably why I lit up. Like I made an intention to do that. And it's nice that other people that work here can see it and feel it. And that's the response that I get.
And I really love your use of intention, of the word intention, to intentionally go out and do stuff. I think many of us female entrepreneurs drift into entrepreneurship through circumstance, situations. We've heard that a lot, the accidental entrepreneur. So I love that whole intentional side of things. I think that's very powerful, and I think we all need to do a little bit more.
Been working 17 years, she said.
I know. That's impressive.
Yeah, we went from a team of 2 to 20, and so that's been by, creating this like culture and environment and always putting back into the people, right? We always put it back towards the people that we work with.
So before we ask your question, I have to ask this. So you've been in this business for 17 years and you wrote your book about, was it 5 years ago, you said?
No, I've actually been in this business for 23 years. I worked at a law firm, very male-dominated law firm for the first 5, and then I created my own law firm. So my firm has been in existence for 17, and my book I published in the fall of 23, so about 2 years old.
So your timeline, it's so you intentionally started this company. So you obviously knew exactly what you were doing and who you were going to help and why you were doing it, even if you didn't speak it out loud.
Exactly. Even though you didn't know that it had happened to me when I did it. Yes.
Wow. That is that yeah, that's like a full circle moment.
Mm-hmm.
And what question would you ask the next guest? You have no idea who they're going to be?
I would say what gets you fired up?
That's a good one. I like that because you can take that a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
You really could. Listen, we've got guests that interpret things 1,001 ways, and again, it could also be like people could answer with work. What gets you fired up in work? What gets you fired up, outside of work?
We
What
won't
gets
lead
you
them. We're
jazzed?
just going to leave it. What gets you fired up?
Fired up. It could just be like a good lunch. With a good cold brew, let me tell you, baby.
Sarah
I'm
likes
back
her
at
food.
I do. And a good caffeine boost. I love that. What gets you fired up? We're gonna make note of that. And then, for our listeners who have heard your story, know where you've been, know kind of, that hey, things sound like they're going well in terms of intentionality. What does the future look like? What, if we ping you in 2-3 years, where are you? What are you doing? Are you writing part 2 of the book?
People always ask me about part 2 of the book. I'm not there yet. I'm not thinking about part 2 because I think I told you it was a process to get to part 1. And I think I'm still living part 2. For me, the future looks like just continuing to grow the firm and continuing to help the women that we do and continuing to develop our reputation and who we are, across the state. We're very well known here in San Diego, but continuing to expand that base.
Obviously, we want to ask you how people can contact you, but because of the very important work that you do, and the fact that we are a female podcast, I really want to ask you, not only how do people get hold of you, but what would they expect when they do get hold of you? What would be the first thing that they would have to have to, I don't know, what's the process that they would face so that we can kind of eliminate some of the fear that might be behind people making these decisions?
Sure. So if they're coming in for a legal consultation at my law firm, then the first thing they would get is the intake person who takes down their basic information. And then the second thing they would get is a call from myself or one of the other partners. There's three other partners. We get a call back from one of us. If it's a sexual assault and the sexual harassment case, our survivor advocate is the intake person that handles all of those calls because of the sensitive nature. So she would be the one handling all of those calls, then the call from the partner, and then an in-person meeting, right? That's when we meet face to face about what happened. And then we explain the whole process. Like after they've made a choice of what, which avenue they want to take, we get started with the process of standing up with them. So I think what they is unusual about our firm is just about the team, right? I think it's really important for you to know that you're not alone. And so just right off the bat, by coming to us, you not only get, the lawyer, you get the associate lawyer, there's a paralegal, there's a legal assistant, and there's a survivor advocate who's there to help you throughout the whole process. So I think they get that right off the bat. And that's really, really helpful. Just again, because they think they're so alone. Like, wait, there's all these people that are here to help me and be with me by my side.
That's a great question too, Serena, because I think a lot of times because of the sensitive nature of it, like your website, alreen.com, ALREEN.com, it'll be on our site. But yeah, good question, Serena, because I didn't even realize, like, before people even reach out, sometimes well, what if? But what if?
What do I need to do? What am I putting myself forward for here? I've gone through enough. I don't think I can deal with this.
Yeah, our role is really, I mean, we recognize that. And so one thing that's really important to us is that we don't want to make you repeat your story over and over again. Like first you got to talk to this person, then you got to talk to this person. So that's really important to us to not have you repeat everything. But what we also have learned as we do this work, that people who have experienced trauma don't tell their story all at once. Like you don't get it all out in just one sitting, right? Like some pieces come out here, and then on another conversation, additional pieces come out. And so we try to focus on that. Like, hey, this is what you said here. Let's talk about this. And so it's more of a continuation of conversation as opposed to having to repeat over and over.
Got it. And the website is the best place to find, or what other avenues do people reach out to you from besides the website?
My firm website is haelaw.com. And you said my personal website. And then, social media, lots of people contact us through social media. So that's another place to find us. And it's the same. It's Alreen on Instagram.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Your story has just been, for me, very empowering. Like it's a subject that I think, many people, if not conveyed in the right way, you can leave feeling very helpless, very, very much in like a what's next? What do we do? But I leave this conversation thinking, holy shoot, thank God we got the Alreens of the world doing the work, working hard, playing hard, really processing all the information and being a resource for others. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your story personally, professionally, the merging of the two. So any listeners who want to learn more, all of your information will be on our site.
And do you only deal with, and before we leave, do you only do San Diego or do you go broader? Let's just get
we
that
go all
out
across the state of California. Yeah, all across the state of California. That's where we're licensed to practice.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. It's a pleasure.